Just double checking. Yes, the only thing on my name was the menu performance improvements. With those, I don't have anything to show off with that, obviously, but that is a continuation of some performance enhancements that we've been working on in the menu system in particular. The menus, if you have clients that are more than like 2 releases behind, you'll notice some pretty substantial improvements in speed, especially last release with one of the minor patches that went in. There was a really big increase in that. It wasn't out in the initial release last time, but it was in the minor side. And then we've continued that into this release as well. There's a handful of things in this release that will affect everybody, but there is one in particular. If you have clients that use the workbooks menu item, there is something coming in with that that will substantially improve their speed. In fact, one of the clients that I was looking at this issue on, they just like their site never loaded under certain circumstances. So pretty big gains to be found in that.
Nice. That's exciting. Will that impact just the workbooks one, or would that impact any of the other like automated links too?
Automated links, it could, yeah. The workbooks was the one where we saw it, but the issue could be broader than that with any of the automated links in particular. So workbook singular and workbooks plural, probably both of those. Potentially other automated things. Not the ones that are imported into the system. The ones that are kind of built on the fly would be the ones in particular that would be affected by that. That being said, there were some performance improvements on a broader level as well that will affect everybody. And those, I would say, the ones directly in this release are a little bit smaller, but there were some very major ones in minor releases on the May release that your clients may not have yet, since they came out kind of after the initial release.
All right, so with this release, we're going to open up connected apps for Tableau Server. So as long as you have Tableau Server version 22.4 or newer, then you should automatically see the toggles show up and be able to use them. So you can see here, the toggle shows up, even though this is Tableau Server. Used to, this was only visible with Tableau Cloud, and then you can go in and create your apps as needed. So that's really the gist of it. It should be exactly the same process that you went through if you had a Tableau Cloud connection. So it's just expanding that functionality.
So for the longest time, importing and exporting had kind of what I would say is like a smaller file limit. So 50 megabytes was the threshold for files to be uploaded. And now we have added the ability to go in and upload very large exports. So like this one is our marketing site. It contains a lot of images. So you can see it's like 270 megabytes. And I can just hit preview import. It does, it has to churn through a lot of data here. So it will take up to like a minute, kind of at the max threshold. But this gets rid of the pretty common refrain of, hey, your export's too large, let's break it apart and then re-import it kind of piece by piece. So one, this I think makes migrating between environments quite a bit more consistent. So you could just export the whole file and then import it in. And then two, this should hopefully make make this page where you're like you say like, hey, I just want to make sure absolutely everything's included. I want to overwrite the entirety of everything that's on my new site. Maybe I think even internally, like if a client sends you a really big export, it's easy to be able to just kind of pull this all in, know your environment's going to be pretty one-to-one, and then start testing things out.
One other thing that I added with scheduled reports is the ability to fire these via the API. So in order to do this, you have to know, which ID of the scheduled report you want to fire. So you can come to your scheduled reports area, find the one you're looking for, grab its ID, and then you can go over to Settings, Curator, API keys, select Tableau, send scheduled report, and then grab or put that ID in the URL that it gives you. So you can see here that it starts to build the URL for you. You can copy that, add in your scheduled report ID equals 50 in this case, and then just hit go and it should run. It may take a while depending on how big your scheduled report is, how many dashboards it has to pull in, things like that. But then you should see it send an email and give you a confirmation that the email has been sent.
Does this use the Q processes system, or is it just when
This one doesn't. There is, if I remember right, there is a way to queue them if you need to. So you could use that if it's going to be a huge report and it's going to time out your browser or something like that. Or if you just need to send it immediately, you can use the send scheduled report endpoint.
Very nice.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks have. I think a lot of like client scenarios that people have requested this for is like, hey, I only want to send my scheduled report after a data refresh finishes, and I think this is pretty key for folks who have asked that question.
Yeah, in that case, you would want to make sure that the scheduled report is probably set to on demand as far as schedule goes. That way it doesn't send out by itself, and then you could build the API call to fire whenever you need it to.
So and apologies if you can hear Encanto in the background. My daughter is watching Encanto in the other room. So we have a small update to Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. So I just put in, I think this is actually supposed to be GTM, not GPT. As you can tell, I've been doing a lot of stuff with GPT recently, but if you put in a tracking code for either Tag Manager or one of the analytics, basically all we've added is a user ID for those to ingest for the Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager events. So that way on that end, when you're doing analysis, you can see user specific behavior as opposed to sort of generalized web activity. So yeah, that should be really helpful for people that are super users on the Google Analytics side and want to see that. Maybe they have Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager for multiple applications, and they'd be able to track specific users' activities across all of their applications based on this user ID. So that's pretty much it. You won't really notice anything visually. This is just in the HTML. But yeah, coming up in the next release, those clients who do want to use that should start to see that information be populated on the Google Analytics side.
I take it the user ID is the user's name?
Yeah, just the username. Not the full display name, but the actual username. Yeah.
Nice.
And is that there was something called GA4. Does that add updated support for Google Analytics for updates that they've added to that?
Yeah, so we already had support. I think they're moving from, I always get it confused. They're either moving from Universal Analytics to all Google Analytics 4 or vice versa, and the other they're about to deprecate. And so we'll probably leave that field open for this coming release, but once it's deprecated, we'll remove the field too. And it should fully support everything they have on that end. So if there's any other sort of niche feature that somebody wants to enable, then we can look at doing that too. But for the most part, all Google has you do is just drop in a chunk of code, which we just do for you if you provide the tracking ID there.
This is a data manager update. For data manager forms, we've had this one kind of this request sort of out there for a long while. You know, when you go to our contact us page, this does not look like the most streamlined design. As you can see, these fields are enormous. So what we have, we've updated and moved our data manager form layouts to be a bit more mobile responsive. So on desktops, they will now basically take up like half of the column width, unless they are a text area field, because usually these require like quite a lot more input. But then as we go on to mobile devices, you know, they'll still stack and they'll take up larger screen space on phones. But then once you get to kind of tablet, larger than tablet sizes, it will respond accordingly. So a bit more, or sorry, a bit less real estate is going to be taken up by these forms, and then don't need to worry about the layout. They're dynamically laid out. And then once again, just as a reminder for this feature, you can reorder these fields so they can show up in whatever order you pick on the back end of Curator.
And then the other thing that I worked on, rather small tweak, is if you've ever used the data manager and you needed to figure out, okay, I'm modifying this attribute, which groups are this attribute being used in? Now you have that towards the bottom. So you just go into an attribute, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see a list there. You know, this particular attribute is used in the address group and the hotel group, or whatever your groups may be named.
I like that feature. That's cool.
Yeah, I found it sometimes confusing that I know which attribute I need to modify, but I'm not really sure which form submitted it. So this helps kind of track that down.
Can you like remove them from the list from there? Like if you click the checkbox?
No, we didn't allow that functionality, because if you've already submitted data, it's kind of an undefined process of what you want to do at that point. So do you want to just clear that column? Do you want to wipe out all the records that had that attribute? You know, so we just kind of locked it down to kind of a read only or a view only mode there.
Okay.
This first one, so we've had this request out for a little while as well. You know, if somebody moves a dashboard around and it disappears and you don't have the metadata API enabled, we can't really go trace where that dashboard got moved to. So, and in this case, you know, I typed in, you know, I overrode the URL that got populated by Curator, put a P in there. So there's a typo in here. So now Curator saying, hey, we can't find this dashboard. Occasionally, you know, if somebody goes in and deletes a whole project, or, you know, moves a bunch of workbooks around, it can be something that you only notice when someone emails and says, hey, this dashboard's broken. So as part of our notification system, which powers the admin email notifications that people can subscribe to, over here, we've added the cannot find dashboards to this notification system. So now you can either see it on Curator, or you can get an email notification letting you know that there are missing dashboards. So it'll link you out directly to that dashboard list, and you'll be able to see the not found. You can still see the big red text and go, okay, I either need to delete this, or I can go in, look at the dashboard, figure out what's wrong here, and then fix the error. So if I refresh this page, I kind of set up a little test here on my end. Another request that we've gotten, or honestly an issue that comes up a lot, that I think people will really benefit from getting a notification ahead of time on, is their SSL certificate expiration. So we've now added a check in to go see within 30 days if someone's certificate is expiring. If it's actually, I think within a month is when we start adding this warning in. So typically a month is plenty of time for people to kind of get going and figure out how to resolve or how to update their SSL certificate. It's not something that we need to worry about on InterWorks hosted instances, but for clients who host their own instance, it's always really important to make sure you're staying ahead of that. So that's another notification that people can get in their email as they subscribe to those new notification updates.